Some people learn emotional independence the way others learn how to swim, not by choice, but because no one ever came back to pull them from the deep end. They grow up fast, quietly, elegantly, carrying the weight of their own feelings long before they ever understood what those feelings meant. From the outside, they appear strong, self-contained, unaffected, the kind of people others rely on without hesitation, because they never seem to ask for anything back. But beneath that calm exterior lives a different story. A childhood where softness was unsafe. A home where vulnerability had no audience. A world where their emotions matured out of necessity, not nature, and so they learned to soothe themselves, to silence themselves, to shrink the parts of their heart that needed too much, too often. From people who offer too little, emotional independence can look like resilience. But sometimes, it is simply the absence of anyone who stayed long enough for dependence to ever feel possible. Asterisk, asterisk. There is a silence that settles over a child long before they ever understand its meaning. A quiet, almost invisible pause in the rhythm of a household. It is the moment they realize no one will notice their tears unless they speak them out loud. And even then, the response is uncertain, delayed, or absent. Some children feel this in the way a parent's gaze shifts elsewhere during conversation. Some feel it in the empty chair at the kitchen table. Some feel it in the soft, dismissive words of a sibling, or in the hurried footsteps of a parent who never lingers. It is subtle, a gentle erosion of the world as they thought it should be. Yet for the child, marks the first fracture of a promise that someone will always be there. At first, they do not name it. They do not call it loneliness or fear. They simply begin to move differently, as if learning to carry invisible weights on shoulders too small to bear them. The first time they soothe themselves when frightened. The first time they make a small, quiet decision about what they will and will not reveal. The first night they fall asleep without a story read to them, a hand to hold, or a voice to calm the echoing uncertainty in their mind. It is in these small, unremarked moments that emotional independence takes root not by choice, but by necessity. The child becomes a quiet caretaker of their own feelings, learning to anticipate what should have been given by others. Their laughter may still reach outward, still shimmer on the surface like sunlight over a pond. But beneath, they have begun the practice of containment, tucking their needs, their anxieties and their longings into corners of themselves where no one else will find them. Sometimes, the lesson comes sharply. Perhaps a parent yells. Perhaps they leave the room in anger. Perhaps the child misreads a tone and fears consequences far beyond comprehension. And in that sharp moment, the child decides, I cannot rely on them. I must manage myself. Other times it comes slowly. A pattern of neglect, a string of small dismissals, a home that is physically present but emotionally absent. The child becomes attuned to the subtle cues that dictate safety and danger. The child grows into a self-reliant shadow of what they could have been if someone had stayed, if someone had consistently seen them. This independence forged from necessity is both a shield and a prison. It teaches resilience, yes, and a remarkable capacity to navigate the world alone. It cultivates observation, empathy, and self-sufficiency. But it also teaches mistrust. It whispers that dependence is weakness, that asking for help is dangerous, that their own heart is unreliable. And the more competent they become at managing themselves, the more distant they drift from connection. Even the smallest act of reliance feels unnatural. A hug may feel suspicious. A shared secret may feel risky. A simple invitation to rest or to receive care may trigger anxiety instead of comfort. Yet, in this quiet self-reliance, the child learns a paradoxical form of strength. They survive. They endure. They continue day after day, carrying burdens that were never theirs to carry. And as they grow, their independence becomes a defining feature, a silent shield, polished over years of necessity. But the world sees only the surface. It sees competence. It sees poise. It sees someone who can manage alone, who needs little, seems unshakable. What the world does not see, what the child carries forever, is the hidden ache, the longing to be allowed to need. The quiet mourning for a childhood that demanded too much too soon. The subtle, lingering fear that any expression of vulnerability may once again go unnoticed. This is the first fracture, the beginning of a lifelong pattern. And though it may be hidden beneath smiles, achievements, and early maturity, its echo is always there, a quiet reminder that emotional independence, when learned too soon, is never purely freedom. It is survival. And survival leaves a mark. Asterisk children are remarkably perceptive. They notice the subtle shifts in voices, the hesitation in footsteps, the tightness around a parent's eyes. They are attuned to the unspoken rules of survival long before they understand the language of emotions. In a home that is unpredictable, inconsistent, or emotionally absent, a child becomes an early scholar of self-reliance. The unpredictability may take many forms. A parent who is physically present but emotionally unavailable. A sibling who competes for attention, or a house where moods swing like storm clouds. Sometimes it is the absence of affirmation. Sometimes the presence of sharp criticism. Sometimes it is simply the weight of responsibility placed on shoulders too young to carry it in such homes. A child learns to anticipate moods, to measure words, to weigh their own needs against the likelihood of rejection or neglect. They quickly learn what can be spoken and what must remain locked away. They learn to ration trust like water in a drought. Every misstep becomes a lesson. Every emotional request a risk. Parentification often emerges quietly. The child becomes a caretaker, but by circumstance. Perhaps they soothe the siblings' fears in the middle of the night. Perhaps they mediate tensions between adults. Perhaps they absorb blame they do not deserve, smoothing over the fractures of a family too distracted by their own turbulence to see what is happening. Over time, these patterns imprint deeply. Independence is no longer just a skill. It becomes a way of life, a shield against disappointment, neglect, and unpredictability. The child grows accustomed to being the one who ensures stability, who manages emotions both their own and others. It is a form of expertise born of necessity, a quiet mastery of resilience. Yet this survival strategy carries consequences. Every act of self-reliance reinforces the notion that relying on others is unsafe. Every lesson in emotional economy deepens the belief that vulnerability is a liability. Every moment of internal caretaking shapes a nervous system primed to anticipate abandonment, to expect disappointment, and to suppress need, the home. In these moments is both cradle and crucible. It provides life, shelter, and sustenance. But it also teaches vigilance, mistrust, and premature wisdom. The child becomes expert at reading invisible cues, at measuring their emotional expressions, at gauging the risk and asking for help. Independence is not chosen, it is enforced by circumstance. And it becomes an internal compass guiding every relationship, every interaction, every choice. It is in these homes that the child often begins to internalize a paradox. They are capable beyond their years. They are strong enough to bear burdens no child should carry. And yet, in learning to manage so much alone, they may never learn the simple, essential truth that being cared for is a human right, not a privilege. The consequences ripple forward. Adolescence brings outward appearances of competence. The teenager who handles conflict calmly. The young adult who seems emotionally unshakable. The student who excels quietly while keeping turmoil tucked away. All are products of early emotional labor. But underneath there is a quiet tension, a subtle strain that shapes identity, self-esteem, and the ability to connect authentically with others. The child learns to thrive in a world that often feels unsafe. They learn to solve problems alone. They learn to quiet the needs that cannot be trusted to be met. They learn a language of emotional independence so precise and practiced that it can seem effortless. But even the most polished independence carries shadows. There is a hidden loneliness in knowing one cannot fully rely on those who should protect, guide, and nurture. There is a quiet ache in understanding that care must be earned rather than freely given. And there is a lingering tension between strength and isolation, a duality that can persist well into adulthood. In the unpredictable home, The child discovers a skill that feels essential yet incomplete. They learn to survive. They learn to anticipate disappointment. They learn to become their own caretaker. And it is this foundation, the adaptations, the internalized caution that will shape every subsequent chapter of life. The roots of early emotional independence grow deep, intertwining resilience with isolation, capability with guardedness, and strength with the quiet longing for a tenderness that may never come. The child survives. Yes, but survival has a cost. And it is in recognizing the origins of this independence that one begins to see both its necessity and its shadow. The dual nature of a strength learned too soon, and the emotional architecture it constructs for the rest of a lifetime. The brain remembers what the heart cannot forget. It maps experiences, patterns, and risks, sometimes before words can be formed. A child who learns emotional independence too early does not merely adapt behaviorally, they adapt neurologically. Their mind becomes an architecture of survival, wiring itself to anticipate neglect, to self-soothe, and to minimize vulnerability. Attachment begins in the earliest years. When caregivers are consistently present, attentive, and responsive, the brain develops a sense of safety. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, calibrates to respond proportionately to threats. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of reasoning and emotion regulation, learns to trust both self and others. But in homes of unpredictability, inconsistency, or emotional absence, these systems are trained differently. The child's nervous system becomes vigilant. Every raised voice, every withdrawn gaze, every missed reassurance signals potential danger. The amygdala remains heightened, scanning for emotional threats. The prefrontal cortex adapts not by trusting but by managing, calculating, containing. Emotions that should flow freely are regulated with precision. Needs that should be expressed are suppressed. Psychologists call this hyperindependence a survival adaptation. It is neither a flaw nor a failure. It is a response to an environment that demanded more than a child could safely ask for. The mind learns that relying on others is uncertain. It learns that safety resides within, not in external relationships. As years pass, these adaptations solidify into identity. The teenager who confidently navigates social challenges, the young adult who never asks for help, the professional who handles crises alone, these are not merely traits. They are the outcome of a brain trained to survive emotionally. But survival comes at a cost. The circuitry that protects also isolates. The skills that keep the child safe simultaneously limit intimacy, trust, and emotional spontaneity. Memory also plays a role. The hippocampus stores events with vivid emotional coloring. Every instance of abandonment, dismissal, or unacknowledged need leaves a trace. When the adult encounters similar situations, the brain triggers responses calibrated for the child they once were. Anger, withdrawal, hyperalertness, or avoidance are often echoes of those early lessons, not irrationalities of the present. But survival strategies anchored in history, the paradox is subtle but profound. The adult appears capable. The adult appears self-reliant. The adult may even excel, seeming unshakable to the outside world. Yet the underlying wiring formed in response to absence renders them highly sensitive to rejection, neglect, or inconsistency. Trust feels risky. Vulnerability feels dangerous. Love, when offered, can trigger hesitation or disbelief. The very skills that allowed survival as a child can hinder thriving as an adult. These adaptations extend into relationships. They may overfunction to manage emotional balance. They may avoid expressing needs, fearing they will be unmet or dismissed. They may withdraw subtly when connection deepens, preemptively protecting themselves from anticipated hurt. And yet, despite these challenges, there is beauty in the architecture of survival. The mind that learned to navigate emotional deserts develops resilience, empathy for others' suffering, and a capacity for quiet observation. It can be remarkably intuitive, sensitive, and wise. It understands suffering in ways that those who were shielded cannot. It can perceive the nuances of human emotion, anticipate crises, and respond with care even when care has been scarce. But wisdom carries weight. Understanding the fragility of connection, the uncertainty of others' attention, the volatility of dependence, these truths leave scars. They are the hidden cost of an independence that matured too soon. The mind is both a sanctuary and a cage, protective yet confining. And here lies the quiet tragedy. Early independence teaches survival, but it does not teach surrender. It equips the child to carry burdens, but not to share them. It prepares the individual to exist alone, but not to truly belong. It produces competence, but often at the expense of intimacy and ease. The adult that emerges is skilled, self-sufficient, and perceptive. But beneath the surface, the nervous system hums with memory of absence. The heart remembers what the brain has learned to guard against. The mind that learned to survive now must navigate a world that often demands vulnerability, the very thing it was trained to protect against. This chapter of the journey is subtle, almost invisible. It does not erupt in drama. It whispers in patterns of avoidance, in guarded gestures, in silent hesitations. It is the mind's quiet commentary on a childhood that required independence before its time. And in recognizing this architecture, one begins to see both the genius and the burden of early emotional survival, the mind that learned to protect itself, and the human yearning it was never trained to embrace. Asterisk, asterisk on the surface. They appear unshakable, composed, reliable. The type of person who carries more than their share, and does so without complaint, but strength. When learned too early, often masks battles that no one sees. The adult who became emotionally independent as a child carries silent struggles, resistances that have roots in necessity, and wounds that remain largely unspoken. They move through the world with careful calibration, measuring every gesture, every word, every expectation. Vulnerability is rarely offered freely. Trust is granted cautiously. Emotions are filtered, weighed, and often postponed indefinitely. Relationships become complicated terrain. Intimacy feels like a double-edged sword, inviting yet dangerous. To ask for help is to risk disappointment. To express need is to risk rejection. To soften is to risk exposure. They learn to manage not only their own emotions, but often the emotions of those around them, anticipating reactions before they are voiced, stepping into roles they never asked for. The internal conflict is constant but subtle. They feel the human longing for connection, yet simultaneously resisted. They crave warmth, empathy, and understanding, but instinctively shrink from the possibility of being let down. Every act of self-sufficiency is both a shield and a chain. It protects them from hurt, yet isolates them from belonging. Even in moments of apparent calm, tension lingers. A text unanswered, a canceled plan, a muted reaction all can trigger echoes of early abandonment. The adult interprets these cues with heightened sensitivity, often overestimating risk and underestimating support. In relationships, this manifests as guardedness, emotional withdrawal, or overcompensation. They may overfunction to prove worth, or underfunction to avoid potential disappointment. Every connection carries the weight of vigilance and self-protection. Professional life. 2. Reflects this internal balancing act. They are dependable, thorough, and highly competent. They anticipate problems, organize tasks, and carry burdens others cannot see. But the same traits that inspire admiration can conceal exhaustion. Burnout is not dramatic, it creeps in silently. It's a constant companion to the person who has never allowed themselves to rest fully. They endure even when the cost is invisible to those around them. The emotional labor of survival creates patterns that are often misunderstood. Friends may see them as strong and resilient, but fail to perceive the hidden fatigue. Partners may admire independence, but fail to notice the cost. Colleagues may rely on competence, but overlook the quiet tension beneath the surface. The struggle is real, yet invisible, leaving the individual to navigate alone the complex landscape of their own mind. Yet, even in these hidden battles, there is depth and awareness. They notice subtleties others miss. They empathize deeply, even when empathy comes at the expense of their own well-being. They understand the fragility of relationships, the precariousness of trust, the value of consistency. Their inner conflict is both a burden and a lens, sharpening perception while heightening sensitivity. This duality, strength and struggle, defines much of adult life for those who became independent too early. It shapes friendships, romances, careers, and self-perception. It informs choices large and small, guiding behavior with a mixture of wisdom and caution. Every decision is filtered through years of learning to survive emotionally, the need to be careful, the fear of relying too much, the habit of caring more than is fair. And yet, within the tension lies potential. Every struggle is also a teacher. Every guarded heart is capable of profound insight. Every act of careful self-sufficiency reveals a deep understanding of human fragility. The very battles that isolate also cultivate compassion, reflection, and resilience. The adult knows, even if they cannot fully articulate it, that strength alone does not guarantee peace. It shields them from pain, but it cannot create the intimacy, connection, or support they long for. They wrestle silently with this truth, learning slowly that self-reliance, while necessary, is not sufficient for a fulfilling life. And so the battles continue, hidden, quiet, and uncelebrated. Yet each day carries subtle victories: the courage to ask for a small favor, the patience to let someone in, the awareness of the tension between independence and connection. Every step toward vulnerability is a step away from isolation, negotiation with fear that has lingered since childhood. In these hidden battles, the adult lives fully. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but with a consciousness honed by early experience. The strength they show to the world is real, but the understanding of what it costs them and what it still demands is the quiet truth they carry alone until they begin to see it clearly themselves. Asterisk, asterisk. Even the strongest structures eventually show signs of strain. Even the most practiced self-reliance has limits. For those who became emotionally independent too early, there comes a moment, a quiet breaking point, when survival alone is no longer enough. It does not always arrive dramatically. It may creep in through exhaustion, through repeated disappointments, or through the realization that carrying everything alone is unsustainable. A series of minor failures, missed support, or unnoticed pain accumulates until the body and mind can no longer maintain. The delicate balance of perpetual independence. The signs are subtle. Sleepless nights, a restless mind that questions its own choices. Feelings once easily contained now seep unpredictably into consciousness. Tasks that were once manageable feel impossibly heavy. The self-reliant adult begins to notice cracks in their armor, fissures where emotion can no longer be fully contained. Relationships often illuminate the breaking point. A partner may fail to notice a need. A friend may misread a signal. A colleague may take more than is given in return. These encounters, small and seemingly ordinary, echo the child's early experiences of absence and unpredictability. They remind the adult that independence, though adaptive, has a cost. The mind begins to register exhaustion differently. The amygdala, once finely tuned to detect threats, now perceives risk everywhere. Stress hormones rise. Emotions fluctuate. The very skills that ensured survival, vigilance, self-containment, overfunctioning, start to fatigue the nervous system rather than sustain it. Some respond with withdrawal. They retreat into routines, habits, and isolation. They resist asking for help, believing that self-sufficiency remains the only reliable safety net. They carry on, even as the weight grows heavier, even as small irritations trigger disproportionate anxiety or sadness. Others respond with bursts of frustration or despair. A minor conflict can feel overwhelming. An unmet expectation may provoke intense self-blame. They wonder why life seems so difficult, why the world demands so much from a person who has always done everything alone. And often, they carry guilt alongside exhaustion: guilt for needing, guilt for showing weakness, guilt for feeling unmoored despite their competence. It is in this quiet breaking point that the paradox of early emotional independence becomes undeniable. The skill that protected them, that allowed them to survive childhood, now contributes to strain, isolation, and inner conflict. What once was a shield can now feel like a prison. Strength becomes heavy. Competence feels lonely, and yet the breaking point is not solely destruction. It is also awareness. It is a mirror reflecting the human cost of survival. It is the first step toward recognizing that independence, while necessary, is incomplete without connection, support, and self-compassion. Some experience the breaking point as physical symptoms. Chronic fatigue, headaches, tension in the body that cannot be explained by external causes. Some experience it as emotional upheaval, crying that arrives unbidden, anxiety that feels persistent, or a profound sadness for needs long denied. Some experience it as relational tension, where conflicts magnify and communication falters. All are signal signs that the inner system, so finely tuned to protect, has reached its limit. They indicate that the adult can no longer maintain the relentless standard of self-sufficiency without consequence. And they offer a quiet invitation to pause, to notice, to acknowledge the cost of independence learned too soon. It is often at this breaking point that insight begins to emerge. The adult sees the patterns inherited from childhood, the vigilance, the self-containment, the mistrust of help. They recognize that the independence they honed was adaptive, necessary, even admirable. But they also begin to understand the trade-offs: the isolation, the anxiety, the emotional fatigue. The quiet breaking point is simultaneously terrifying and clarifying. It strips away illusions of invulnerability, revealing the human need for connection beneath the armor. It challenges the belief that one can carry every burden alone, no matter how capable. It awakens an awareness that survival does not equal thriving, that competence does not replace companionship, that strength does not preclude vulnerability. And while the breaking point can be uncomfortable, even painful, it also marks a critical transition. It signals readiness, perhaps for the first time, to consider what it truly means to let someone in, to share the weight of emotion, and to rediscover the parts of themselves long hidden beneath the mantle of early independence. Here, at this delicate juncture, life holds a quiet promise that one can acknowledge exhaustion without shame, that one can feel need without guilt, that one can finally glimpse the possibility of being cared for, not as a failure, but as a human right. The quiet breaking point is the doorway, the threshold between survival and growth, between self-reliance and emotional freedom. And though crossing it requires courage, it also opens the way to the deeper understanding that the human heart, even when trained to endure alone, was always meant to belong. Asterisk, asterisk. The adult who has carried too much alone begins, slowly, to notice a subtle shift. It is not dramatic at first. A pause in conversation, a softening in posture, a moment when it feels almost permissible to acknowledge a need without immediately resolving it. Relearning. What it means to need is not an instruction manual. It is a delicate process, a practice in patience, gentleness, and observation. The nervous system, trained for hypervigilance, resists at first. Vulnerability feels risky. Trust feels uncertain. Even small gestures of care can be met with hesitation, disbelief, or self-doubt. Yet, step by step, the individual begins to experiment with dependence in small, safe ways. A friend is allowed to offer support without a preemptive sense of repayment. A partner is permitted to notice struggle without immediate defensive action. A colleague is allowed to share responsibility without suspicion. The world is approached not as a series of threats to manage, but as a space where needs may be recognized and met. This process is both quiet and profound. It is the slow loosening of muscles long held tense. It is the softening of boundaries once rigidly necessary for survival. It is the recognition that asking for help does not signify weakness. It is the understanding that care received can coexist with self-reliance, rather than replace it. Psychologically, the adult begins to integrate experience with insight. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that reasons, reflects, and evaluates, gradually learns that vulnerability does not automatically bring harm. Neural pathways conditioned for caution are slowly supplemented with new pathways for trust. The amygdala's alarms begin to quiet, just enough to allow the possibility of rest, connection, and mutual support. Healing is uneven and nonlinear. There are days when old reflexes resurface: withdrawal, hyperindependence, self-sufficiency, but these are met with growing awareness rather than guilt. Moments of hesitation become moments of reflection. Mistakes become opportunities to learn rather than evidence of failure. Relationships transform subtly. The adult begins to communicate need without fear of rejection. They allow others to hold space for them without immediately assuming responsibility for managing all outcomes. Intimacy deepens, not because it is forced, but because it is consciously chosen and safely received. The heart, long practiced in self-containment, learns the rhythm of receiving as well as giving. In solitude, the process continues inwardly. The adult revisits the child within the one who carried too much too early. They offer recognition to that small self. They acknowledge its resilience, its courage, its survival. They notice the parts that were never allowed to cry, to rest, to be comforted. And in doing so, they begin the lifelong work of integration, folding early lessons into adult wisdom, merging self-reliance with capacity for connection, and allowing need to exist without shame, poetically. This chapter of life is like learning to breathe in new ways. For years, breathing was survival fast, shallow, cautious. Now it becomes full, deliberate, and flowing. The adult learns that needing others is not betrayal, but truth. That care is not weakness, but nourishment. That strength can coexist with vulnerability, competence with rest, independence with belonging. And in this gentle expansion of the heart, the adult discovers something profound. The very qualities honed through early independence: resilience, observation, empathy are now enriched by the capacity to receive. They are no longer merely surviving the world. They are engaging with it fully, openly, and with measured trust. The nervous system, once attuned solely to protection, learns attunement to comfort, presence, and subtle joy. Ultimately, relearning what it means to need is a meditation on humanity itself. It is a recognition that self-reliance, while essential, is not the sum total of human experience. It is an invitation to balance strength with openness, vigilance with trust, and survival with belonging. And in this quiet evolution, the adult finally understands the heart, even when trained to endure alone, was always capable of accepting care. The mind, even when built for independence, was always capable of integration. The soul, even after years of carrying burdens alone, was always capable of surrendering gently, selectively, and beautifully to the truth that to need and to be needed in return is an essential human act. The journey from self-contained survival to the art of balanced interdependence is neither simple nor linear. It is gradual, reflective, and intimate. But each small act of trust, each willingness to be seen, each acknowledgement of need is a reclamation. A reclamation of what childhood demanded be hidden, and an opening toward the profound liberation of emotional wholeness.